The Antonov An-225 Mriya is one of the most extraordinary achievements in the history of aviation, a machine so vast in scale, so ambitious in its conception, and so unique in its role that it became a legend even during its own lifetime. Born out of the technological ambitions of the Soviet Union in the 1980s, the aircraft was designed to meet a very specific requirement: the transportation of outsized loads, including the Soviet space shuttle Buran and other extremely large cargo that no other airplane could handle. Yet its destiny went far beyond its original mission. Over time it evolved into a global icon of aviation, a symbol of engineering genius, and a one-of-a-kind workhorse that carried everything from gigantic generators to humanitarian aid across continents. To truly appreciate the An-225, one has to understand not just the specifications but the philosophy of its creation, the daring spirit behind its design, and the incredible journeys it undertook until its tragic destruction in 2022. When one first encounters the An-225, whether in person or through images, the sheer size of the aircraft immediately dominates perception. At 84 meters in length, with a wingspan of 88.4 meters, it dwarfed any other operational aircraft in the world. Its height of over 18 meters made it equivalent to a 6-story building standing on wheels. Unlike typical large aircraft, the An-225 featured 6 massive turbofan engines, each capable of producing thrust powerful enough to lift smaller airliners on their own. These Progress D-18T engines were mounted in pairs under the enormous wings, giving the aircraft both redundancy and an extraordinary lift capability. Supporting such a heavy airframe required a reinforced landing gear system that was unlike anything else in the skies. The An-225's landing gear featured 32 wheels distributed in a complex arrangement that allowed the aircraft to pivot and maneuver on the ground despite its immense size. Watching the aircraft taxi was almost surreal, as it seemed to move like a slow leviathan across the runway, commanding attention and respect at every airfield it visited. The cargo hold of the An-225 was a cavernous space unmatched in aviation. Measuring over 43 meters long, more than 6 meters wide, and about 4 meters high, the internal bay could accommodate loads so massive that they often seemed more suited for maritime shipping than for air transport. The nose of the aircraft could be raised, creating an access ramp that allowed vehicles and equipment to drive directly into the hold. This unique capability gave the An-225 a versatility that made it indispensable for tasks ranging from transporting locomotives and massive generators to carrying wings for other aircraft or even entire smaller planes. The volume of the cargo bay was around 1,300 cubic meters, a figure that is difficult to imagine until one walks inside and realizes that it feels like entering the interior of a warehouse mounted on wings. Performance figures of the An-225 further highlight its uniqueness. With a maximum takeoff weight of about 640 metric tons, it was the heaviest aircraft ever built. Its payload capacity reached up to 250 tons, setting multiple world records in terms of weight lifted and carried by an airplane. Despite its size, the An-225 was capable of cruising at speeds of over 800 kilometers per hour, similar to many commercial jets, and it could cover intercontinental distances depending on load. Range was always a function of payload, as carrying maximum cargo reduced how far the aircraft could travel without refueling. Nevertheless, with lighter loads and additional fuel, the aircraft could perform missions spanning several thousand kilometers, making it suitable for global operations. The ability to combine extreme capacity with true long-distance capability was precisely what set the Mriya apart from cargo aircraft like the Boeing 747-8F or the Lockheed C-5 Galaxy. Those planes were large and powerful, but none approached the An-225 in absolute payload terms. The story of the An-225's creation begins in the Soviet Union during the Cold War. At that time, the Soviet space program sought to rival NASA's space shuttle system, and the Buran orbiter was at the center of that effort. Unlike the American shuttle, which was launched attached to a massive external tank and solid rocket boosters, the Buran required transportation between production, assembly, and launch facilities spread across the Soviet Union. For this, a carrier aircraft was needed, and while the Antonov An-124 Ruslan was already a powerful heavy-lift plane, it was not large enough for this unique mission. Antonov engineers therefore embarked on designing an even larger aircraft, building on the An-124 platform but stretching its dimensions and capabilities to unprecedented levels. The result was the An-225, first flown in December 1988. Its debut astonished the aviation world, as nothing comparable had ever taken to the skies. When it carried the Buran space shuttle on its back for demonstrations, it presented one of the most dramatic images of Soviet aerospace power ever seen. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, the future of the An-225 became uncertain. The Buran program was cancelled, and the colossal aircraft no longer had its original mission. For several years, the An-225 sat idle in storage, a dormant giant with no clear role. However, in the early 2000s, Antonov Airlines realized that there was in fact a global demand for transporting oversized cargo. No other aircraft could move certain items quickly across continents, and industries ranging from power generation to oil and gas to aerospace began to recognize the value of such an asset. The An-225 was reactivated, refurbished, and began a second life as a commercial cargo aircraft. From that point onward, it became famous not just as a relic of the Soviet space era but as a practical workhorse used in missions that captured the imagination of people worldwide. Over the next 2 decades, the An-225 undertook missions that highlighted its unparalleled abilities. It delivered enormous diesel generators to disaster-stricken regions where power infrastructure had collapsed. It transported 150-ton industrial equipment that would have taken weeks to move by ship but could be delivered in days by air. It carried massive supplies of humanitarian aid, including during the COVID-19 pandemic, when the aircraft delivered millions of medical masks and protective equipment from China to Europe. These missions underscored how aviation could provide rapid solutions to logistical challenges on a global scale, and the An-225 stood at the forefront of that effort. Every time it landed in a new country, crowds would gather to witness the arrival of the world's largest plane. Airports often prepared special events around its visits, and aviation enthusiasts tracked its flight paths across continents in real time. Few aircraft in history achieved such public recognition and excitement. The An-225 also set dozens of world records. It carried the heaviest single piece of cargo ever transported by air, a 189-ton generator, and the longest cargo item at 42 meters in length. It broke records for maximum payload lifted to altitude and for speed over a closed circuit with a heavy load. The Guinness Book of World Records acknowledged many of these feats, cementing the Mriya's place in aviation history. Pilots who flew it often spoke of the challenge and thrill of operating such a massive aircraft, emphasizing that, despite its size, the An-225 handled smoothly once airborne, a testament to the engineering behind its design. Sadly, the An-225's story ended in tragedy. In February 2022, during the Russian invasion of Ukraine, fighting reached Hostomel Airport near Kyiv, which was the base of Antonov Airlines. The An-225 was parked in a hangar at the time, undergoing maintenance. During the battles for control of the airfield, the aircraft was severely damaged and ultimately destroyed. Images circulated showing the wreckage of the nose section, confirming that the world's only flying An-225 had been lost. The news devastated aviation enthusiasts and professionals around the globe. For Ukrainians, the Mriya was more than an airplane, it was a national symbol, a dream that embodied resilience, ambition, and pride. Its destruction was seen not only as a material loss but as a cultural tragedy. Since then, discussions have emerged about the possibility of rebuilding the An-225. Antonov has stated that a second incomplete airframe exists and could be finished, though the costs would be enormous, estimated in the billions of dollars. International partnerships and funding would be required to make such a project possible. For now, the An-225 lives on in memory, photographs, and the countless stories of those who saw it fly. Whether it will ever return to the skies remains uncertain, but its legacy as the largest, heaviest, and arguably most awe-inspiring aircraft ever built is secure. Reflecting on the An-225, one realizes that it was not just an airplane but a statement of human capability. Aviation history is filled with impressive aircraft, from the Wright Flyer to the Concorde to the Boeing 747. Yet the An-225 stood apart because it represented an extreme of possibility. It pushed the boundaries of what could be designed, built, and flown. It demonstrated that engineering was not only about efficiency but also about imagination and ambition. It carried burdens so vast that they seemed impossible, and it did so with grace and reliability. For those who witnessed its takeoffs, the roar of 6 engines and the sight of a structure as large as a building lifting effortlessly into the sky was unforgettable. In conclusion, the Antonov An-225 Mriya remains one of the most remarkable creations in human engineering. From its origins in the Soviet space program to its rebirth as a global cargo carrier, from the records it set to the aid it delivered, from the excitement it generated to the sorrow of its destruction, the story of the An-225 is one of dreams realized and lost. Its very name, Mriya, meaning dream, encapsulates the essence of what it stood for. The dream was not only Ukrainian, nor only Soviet, but a dream of all humanity, that we can build machines that defy imagination, that we can overcome distance and weight and time, and that in doing so, we touch the skies in ways that inspire generations. The An-225 may no longer fly, but its dream continues, and in the hearts of those who love aviation, it will always soar.